Hi, this is Dave.
This is Tara.
And this is Adam, and you're listening to People Also Watched.
We're three industry insiders clinging onto the lower rungs of the Hollywood ladder, and we love examining movies.
Every month, studios release big-budget features, and for every one of those, there are a ton of lesser-known movies you just might love.
So, as we cling here to the bottom of this career ladder, we're going to watch big-budget movies, but we're also going to introduce you to an older, nearly forgotten movie that people also watched.
So, like and subscribe to us, leave us a review, and find out what else you can watch. Why is it every time I go off script I suck?
Dave, you have a certain set of skills, and going off book ain't one of them.
I know.
Also, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Twitter, if you like social media, why don't you follow us at People Also Watch? Occasionally, we post fun memes and cool graphic art that has to do with the show, and then Tara expresses her opinion.
How dare you? How dare you minimize my opinion?
See?
Hey!
Adam goes off book and he's great.
Hey! It's a Nic Cage fucking double feature, baby! We're starting with, I'm going to say it wrong, Renfield? A horror comedy. What is it, Renfield? I always say it wrong. Renfield? Yeah. Okay, we're going to start with,
Renfield.
Well, that's who we're starting with. It's a horror comedy that blends talent. That bleeds. Oh my God! I'm starting again. It's Nic fucking Cage Double fucking Feature. Yeah, we're starting with Renfield, a horror comedy that bleeds talent, directed by Chris McKay, from a story by Robert Kirkman, and starring the aforementioned Nic fucking Cage, Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina, and Ben Schwartz.
Just released for streaming on Peacock, Renfield was released in theaters on April 14. It cost $65 million to make and has made over just $26 million at the box office. So, Dave, not off book, what is your log line for this movie that we hope you wrote down beforehand?
I did not write down a log line.
Oh, we know.
Add her up.
This takes the classic Dracula storyline and his assistant and gives it a toxic workplace makeover.
Okay, sure.
I mean,
yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
I believe
no,
that.
That's
right?
good. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So,
I mean,
Renfield's this dude who works for Dracula, and Dracula overpowers him, and he's a monster, and he's a bad boss, and Renfield has to deal with that.
He's in a toxic relationship.
Very
he's
toxic
in a codependent relationship, which I thought was kind of funny and brilliant. A way to map this story.
I had a lot of fun at the movies when I saw this. You know, Mandy and I went to see this in the theater, and we had a great time. Go ahead,
Adam.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, honestly, from the get, I was like, oh my God, this is the Nic Cage we want. We want this Nicolas Cage. And I feel like we can all agree that Nicolas Cage playing Dracula was really an inevitability. Like, it didn't matter how it happened, but one day it was like, when that guy was born, that had to happen.
Right, yeah, like some sort of prophecy. Some sort of prophecy was fulfilled. Yeah.
And then, after the golden trumpet destroys the world, Nic Cage shall become Dracula.
I mean, I thought the makeup, by the way, in this movie was pretty impressive. Because so what happens at the beginning of the movie is you see Renfield, and he's taking care of Dracula, and Dracula's getting attacked by all these vampire hunters, and he gets hit by the sunlight. And then he has to recover. And so they show Nic Cage as Dracula slowly recovering over the period of time. And you see him in this various states of recovery. And whoa, is it gross. But then, they didn't shy away from any of that in this movie. Like, the fight scenes are super bloody. Like, Nicholas Hoult beats the crap out of people with dismembered arms at one point.
He pulls the arms off of a dude and then beats him with his own arms.
Yep.
Phenomenal.
I was actually very shocked about it from the amount of gore in the movie.
Yeah,
really?
There was a ton of gore.
I don't know. I felt like, because I hate gore, as you guys know, I don't like horror movies.
What do you mean?
Made me
laugh.
Like,
you loved Cocaine Bear.
You know why? Because I think if you give me a comedy where it's like so ridiculous, then it's not real. Like, this was every time they got hit, it was like a gusher of blood, waterfalls of blood. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was Evil Dead amounts of blood.
Yes.
Agreed. And And the other thing too is I'm biased in this movie because anything Nicholas Hoult or Ben Schwartz does, I'm usually on board for. Like and Nic Cage, of course.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Dave.
Did it feel to you guys like Nicholas Hoult was doing a Hugh Grant impersonation?
I literally wrote that down.
Yeah.
I was like, he
right?
had so much Hugh Grant in this movie that I was like, oh, I really love Nicholas. Like, he's the Hugh Grant we've been missing.
Yep.
Honestly.
Yes.
And see, and that leads me into the only part of the movie I wasn't really a fan of, which was Awkwafina. And
Really?
Yeah, because she just doesn't have any chemistry with Nicholas Hoult, like at all.
Oh, I liked it. I thought
she
was
doesn't have,
really
but she doesn't have
funny.
chemistry with anybody. It's like, yeah, she's just kind of this dead-eyed whatever. And I get that she's funny. She's totally funny. I'm not discounting that. But, you know, if it's a buddy cop movie, which is what I kind of call this, right? I wouldn't call this, you know, a rom-com in any way. But it's like kind of a buddy cop relationship between her and Renfield. I'm like, I don't value the relationship. I'm not concerned for her well-being. You know, her drives and her wants are kind of like whatever for me. So I don't know.
I
Maybe
totally disagree. I actually thought she was really well placed in this because of the way, like, you know, she's kind of a self-assured cop, and then she watches this guy come in and absolutely like rip people apart, and she's like, "Oh, thank you." And it's like, I don't know. I kind of thought it was kind of cute because also, I think, I don't know, maybe I know too much about codependent relationships, but I was like, that's the other thing about codependent people. Like, he's obviously going to glom right onto her because now that he's like trying to break away from Dracula, he needs somebody else to like
Sure.
be codependent
That's an
with.
interesting point.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess the other thing is that, like, as a cop, she's like a very hard-nosed cop. You know what I mean?
Right.
She's very much like
Sure.
trying to live up to her dad's reputation, and then her sister's in the FBI, and you know
And she works on a very corrupt police
Right.
force.
But her reoccurring throughout in the script, her motivation is stemmed from the family that we never really spend a lot of time with, or you know, come to care that much about. You know, like there are moments where Awkwafina's like, "I have to go and save my sister," and I'm like, "You mean that woman we met once and you kind of had a cold relationship with? Why?"
Yeah, I agree. I felt like, you know, I think it's hard with movies like this because it's like you have to establish obviously the Renfield Dracula and everything he's going through, but then you have to like establish that she's not just working for herself or working against the system. She has a personal thing. But yeah, it's hard because like we never see her dad or understand why he's important, and then the relationship with the sister is such a side detail that it
Right.
is hard to track like why she cares so much. And I think
Right.
if there's that's like to me the only true like weakness in the story of this. It's that sort of thing.
I feel like there's a different movie was filmed than was presented when all edited together. I feel like they did a lot of like compressing in the editing because there was a lot of moments of what do they call it? Not you know, when they do redo the voiceover.
You like exposition?
ADR.
There was a lot of ADR in it where it was summing up moments. Like there was one from Ben Schwartz where they do it like from behind him, looking towards Dracula, where he's trying to get through a huge mouthful of plot points to get to the point where Dracula's like, "Hey, why don't we team up together?" And it just felt really the whole thing felt really compressed to me in a weird way. Like they were trying to save things in editing. I think when Nicholas Hoult is in the, you know, group therapy and the guy from Ghost, I forget his name, but he's a very funny character actor, and he's running the group therapy, and Dracula walks in, and the guy from Ghost is like, "Hey, come on in," and Nicholas Holt's like, "No,
Yeah.
you know, don't invite Dracula in." And the way it almost felt like in the trailer it came across better than it actually did in the actual movie. There was like this strange, like Nicholas Hoult didn't get a chance to go. I feel like that comedy beat, he needs to stop, realize Dracula's coming in, let the audience realize Dracula's coming in, and be like, "No!" And Dracula just like slowly stepping in because he's already been invited in. And this in this in the movie, it felt very compressed, where it was almost like, come on in, and Dracula starts walking in, Hoult is like, no, and you miss that comedy beat. And that's how I kind of feel about the whole movie. I feel like it was just a little offset from the comedy beats I wanted it to hit.
That may have been an editing problem. That may have been the editor.
Yeah, it could have been.
It's...
You know what?
Go ahead.
When I see things like that, I tend to think, oh, they're trying to fix something in editing. Like, they didn't get the shot, and they were trying to make the most of what they had. But it could be the reverse, too.
Yeah, it does feel like, now that you say it feels like that they probably filmed more, or just that there was like one or two too many things that they were trying to shove in there, right? And it's like, because the whole other beat with Ben Schwartz and his mom, which I thought was funny, it's like, because you have the whole beat of like, there's this, like a whole like New Orleans, like, you know, this underground, you know, these people that own the cops kind of thing. And it's like, you can do all that. There's just like 3 very separate movies happening.
Well,
and I think that's like,
that, yes.
And I definitely feel like instead of having his own voice in this, Chris McKay was like, all right, let's take this from this movie and that from this movie and kind of mesh it together to make a third movie. You know, like a lot of borrowed themes, shots, lighting choices, action design. You know what I mean? It kind of felt very whatevered. I don't know.
So what's interesting is, because I want to just like put a little pin in what I'm about to say, because we're going to talk about the next movie. But I feel like this is a great example of how you have, like, great actors are made better by their creative team, like, and how a crew really makes a movie. Because I think this movie could have gone real wrong. I feel like it could. But I have to say, like, though we're talking about, like, you know, this, that, and the other, from start to finish, I really liked this movie. It was fun. I thought everybody in it was like exactly on the same level of where they needed to be. And, you know, like just maybe one step over the top. But also, I feel like when you have Nic Cage as Dracula, everybody else can do anything and it's going to be okay.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. He gets to be an 11, right? And everybody else could be at a 10.5. And we'd be like, yep, we buy it. It's fine.
I don't want to give a spoiler to the next movie that we're going to talk about, but Nic Cage is one of those actors that there are times when you know he's invested in the material, and there's times when you know he's not.
He's just not. He's phoning it in, sure.
He's just phoning it in. And I think in this one, he was invested.
Oh,
he was like...
top to bottom.
Really excited to play Dracula, was doing it to the hilt, and it was so much fun.
Right.
Watching him.
I actually think what we should do, unless anyone has anything else to say, is move on to that next movie, because I think there's a lot more to say about that one than maybe this one.
Yeah, but other than like, here's the only thing I will say. I think people should watch it. I'm surprised it didn't do as well. I feel like the marketing was not. The only time I ever heard about this movie, Adam, is when we went to go see whatever we went to go see, and there was a trailer for it. And that's the only time I heard about this movie. And I was like, this movie should be huge. Like it was good for like seeing a movie in a theater. I was like, Renfield was perfect.
I definitely think it was mismarketed, just in regard, like, for instance, didn't see a lot of commercials for it.
No.
Didn't see any print advertising for it, and we're in Los Angeles, which means they were kind of relying entirely on theatrical, like, advertising, the previews before the movie, and not a lot of people go to movies anymore, so...
Yeah. And I don't think, like, it's funny because the day we went to see it, it wasn't in theaters anymore. Like, it wasn't out for very long in theaters.
Right.
Yeah, it came out April 14th and was on Peacock by June 9th.
Yeah.
June 6th, I think. Whatever it was.
June
Anyways,
6th?
It was, like, very truncated. And I was like, could we have had, like, a couple more weekends that I could have gone to see it?
The other thing is, and this is, like, maybe I'm taking a step too far back, but it is a crowded summer also for movies. Because you've got, like...
Yeah.
Already we've had Guardians of the Galaxy and Dungeons & Dragons, 2 massive movies that have been crowded out of the movie theaters because of Spider-Verse, Fast 10, Elementals, The Flash.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just...
You're right. It's a packed summer. You're right.
Yeah.
I wonder if this had been released at a different time, if it would have done better.
To me,
Halloween.
I was going to say, like, I'm surprised they didn't wait for this for October.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Anyway, let's talk about the next movie. After this commercial break. Now here's a movie that people also watched. Saddle up! It's time to go to the Old West for another new Nic fucking Cage movie. The Old Way was released in theaters January 6, 2023. That's an auspicious release date for a movie.
Adam, is that your drunk cowboy?
Yep. Yep. It was kind of like, what's
cowboy?
his name? What's the old blue dog that would do the like Looney Tunes? What was his name? Oh, McGraw? No, yeah, something.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Something McGraw. Yeah, that was him. All right, keep going.
Okay. All right. The Old Way stars Nic fucking Cage, Shiloh Fernandez, and Kiera Armstrong. In a quick Google, there's no information about the budget or how much this movie was made was found. We couldn't find out how much money this movie made. You know what? It's better that way. That could either be because they are hiding it or lazy research, Dave. So, Dave, you're riding the log line train? What have you got? Like, this is a terrible accent. I can't.
You were doing an accent?
No.
I'm just like, oh, Reno's back.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Dave, go.
Okay, so I'm not going to do a log line. I'm just going to suggest a scene.
Okay.
Nicolas Cage walks into his agent's office with a DVD copy of Unforgiven. The end.
Yeah.
And said, I want to do this.
Yeah. You know what's funny? As soon as this movie started, I'm like, oh, it's Unforgiven on a shoestring budget with none of the talent. Yep.
My first note about this movie is like, oh, this is like the community theater version of a Nic Cage movie.
That is a sad, sad statement.
But
I mean, it couldn't be more accurate. It felt like everything from top to bottom creatively was like, okay, like we're gonna make our first movie out of film school. Like,
basically.
it was so awkward.
Yeah, it very much felt that way.
Yeah,
I don't want to say that it was bad. It just was like slow and old feeling, and not in a good way, but in a like, oh, this is kind of screenwriting from 1972.
Sure. I mean,
I also said it's like the cleanest looking old West town I've ever seen on screen.
That was the thing that bothered me. Like, there was no grit to the whole movie. It was
there
clearly
was no production
shot.
design.
Right,
it was
clearly
looks
shot.
Fine. Shoot it.
It was clearly shot digitally. It was clearly shot designed for streaming, which means it's 23:9:8, which gave everything a really flat look to begin with. Then the set design was garbage, and they didn't spend any money on. The only thing they probably spent money on was Nic Cage's handlebar mustache. Which only was in the first 5 minutes of the movie, which is sad. I would have enjoyed Nicolas Cage with a handlebar mustache for the duration.
Yeah. I also feel like, so going back to what my comment from before is, this is why you watch your DPs reel a couple times before you hire them. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it's like everything was, like there was nothing interesting about, like I couldn't get into any character because you kind of just, the shots were just so not interesting and I didn't care and it was so rote and it was like, okay, you know, bad guys kill main guy's wife. He used to be a bad guy, so now he's going to be called up to be a bad guy again. But now he's got a daughter. It's like, okay.
Yeah, well, that's just, I feel like a lot of leaps were made without justification in this movie. It's like, okay, you're going to go on a mass kill. You're going to avenge your father, 25 years later because he was shot in the street by a guy. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I understand that's the motivation, but they don't go into the detail of it. They don't sit there and go like, because you killed my dad, I had to work in a coal mine for 20 years and my life was shit. So fuck you, Nic Cage. I'm a-coming for you. There was none of that. Like, Unforgiven is a great example of a movie that does this really well because what they do is they say, there's a prostitute who had her face butchered. And they're calling it like whore's gold, which is because all the prostitutes put their money together to hire a hired gun to kill these guys who scarred up this prostitute. And so there's multiple reasons for you, the audience, and the actors and the characters in the movie to keep pursuing these people, Like, no matter what gets in their way. And that's what makes it so interesting to watch. In this movie, It's kind of like, well, that's his son, so I guess he wants revenge.
25 years later, but we don't see him for 25 years. We just know, apparently, that's the only thing he thought about for 25 years, no matter what else happened in his life.
And he was doing okay, judging by how clean he was. You know what I mean? He had nice stuff. Like, he wasn't Yeah, I don't know. Don't know.
He had Clint Howard as a sidekick.
You know what would have been more interesting? What would have been more interesting is if he was on the run from the law and he just happened upon Nic Cage. And he's like, oh, yeah, I remember you. You shot my dad. I'm going to kill your wife. And then it's just like, and then he just keeps going and Nic Cage is hounding him. He's like, why are you following me?
Yeah, but it's like, it is weird. It's like, even when like the confrontation scene where he's like, you don't remember me? And Nic Cage is like, not really. And it's like, it's such a letdown. It's like, I need just, I don't know. I felt like too, like, these people, I wrote it, I go, so these are just psychopath people that just like show up to your door, kill people, but then like just keep going. And you're like, okay, but okay.
And the whole time you had this storyline with the daughter where he's trying to teach her how to be a sociopath, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was just so kind of odd because at least in Unforgiven or John Wick, because this is Unforgiven meets John Wick without the interesting gunplay, is that in Unforgiven, he's kind of like comparing himself now to what he was in the past, and he knows he left it in the past, and he wants to leave it in the past, and he wants it to be better for his children, possibly. And then in The Old Way, Nic Cage was like, well, here's how you be a sociopathic murderer, and that's what I'm going to be now because my wife's gone.
Right. Yeah. Right. I love the motley crew that is the bad guys' posse. Like, there's the old prospector Confederate soldier. There's the giant dude, who wear the suspenders and a tiny hat. You know what I mean? There's the really attractive, very clean-looking cowboy sidekick who's, I guess, good with a gun. Like, it was, it's such a trope. No effort, no thought.
It was a local amusement park posse casting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you had an amusement park that was like Old West themed, these are the people working there.
Sure.
Right.
That's a good point.
Again, and a clean, like, this is the cleanest version of Westworld I've ever seen. It's funny because I went to like read a couple reviews because I was like, what? Who did this appeal to? And everybody said the same thing. It's like the most like watered down version of a Western with nothing inventive. And I felt like, that's like if I had never seen a Western or didn't know what they were, I'd be like, oh, maybe this is kind of okay.
This is a movie about the West.
It's a movie. It's a movie set in the West.
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah. I feel like this was shot in 2 weeks. That's the vibe I had.
Oh my God, yes.
We got it. We got it in one. We're done. Moving on.
That's exactly.
Yeah, and they were probably like,
we
Nic
got
Cage
it in
is
1
like,
week.
Yeah, Nic Cage's agent's probably like, you get him for 3 days.
Yeah,
and that's like, there you go.
Yeah. There's that really awkward. So the whole movie is based around the fact that Nic Cage's wife gets killed, and the only interaction you see Nic Cage with his wife, who was not a bad actress, actually. No. I was like, I believe. The only part I didn't believe is when Nic Cage kissed her, and it was the most.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, because she's a very attractive 20-something-year-old woman, and here comes Nic Cage.
I know.
Just like, oh no, run, little girl.
Yeah, that was the hardest part because you're like, here comes this ogre old man Nic Cage, and he's like, I love you, and I was like, oh God, no.
Well, also the way. He had, like, the way they were like, the whole idea, again, his wife has changed Nic Cage, right? His wife has redeemed him. But, like, Nic Cage is just like, I like watching you.
Yeah.
I like watch you do anything.
Right.
And I'm like, is there no energy? Is there no joy? Is there no, dialogue you couldn't give Nic Cage that didn't involve him creepily staring at a 20-year-old? It's like.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was, again, I go back to Unforgiven and I go back to John Wick, where it's kind of the same setup. These evil killers hang up their guns,
right?
And then they're called back into action,
right?
I don't think Nic Cage really hung up his gun at all. He did not seem interested. I think he was relieved his wife was killed, and he was able to like just go on a killing spree one last time.
Yeah, like he was not excited about his store that he owned. At all.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, okay, a trained killer now has a wife and a 12-year-old girl who doesn't want him to walk her to school, and he owns a candy store. Like, what? I mean, I know it's a general store, but candy is featured.
There's a lot of featured jelly beans, yeah.
But
the 10-minute scene where she cleans every single jelly bean.
Weird scene.
Was one of the most fascinating.
Yeah,
I was like, this is she about to like?
She's on the spectrum. I don't know.
Yeah, I literally was like, what's this scene going to turn into? Is she going to, like, make them all bullets? Like, what are these jelly beans going to do?
Jelly bean bullets. I'd watch that movie.
And then, I'd buy those.
Yeah.
I guess, okay, here's a question for you both. Do you think this is a situation where Nic Cage said to his agent, I want to make Unforgiven. Find me a script that is Unforgiven. The agent said, you got it, Nic Cage. And as soon as he left, he walked out of his office, went down to the mailroom, and said, which one of you is a writer with a script that's a Western? Or do you think Nic Cage walked into the office and said, I want to make Unforgiven. The agent said, you got it, Nic Cage. He went home and talked to his young child who wrote a paper for 8th grade history class about a Western that he created, and that's how the script got made.
I'm going to say option 3, which is this particular filming group is like somebody's assistant, and they wrote this movie, and they got a bunch of money together, and they were like, because they called it, they were like, Clint Howard was in this. There was a couple favors. There's a couple known actors.
Big names.
And they were like, someone's dad is like a trust fund, right? He's a trust fund baby. They had all this money, and they're like, Nic Cage, we'll give you $1 million. And he's like, you've got me for 24 hours. And they're like, sold. That's what I think it is.
Because I'm Nic Cage, and I don't sleep anyway, so.
Yeah, I think they literally got the money together, and he's like, it was a minimal commitment. And he's like, all right.
Or I wonder if it's a situation where, like, Nic Cage is rep by, let's say, CAA, as is Clint Howard, and like it's the end of the like 2021 fiscal year, and they're like, we got to get rid of some of this money. Let's throw a Western together with a couple of these actors. Yeah, Nic Cage, that's great. Clint Howard, sure.
Nick will probably say yes. He says yes to a lot of garbage. The last thing the other thing I want to talk about is the little girl in this. By the way, because we've been talking, she actually was a very decent little actress.
Yeah, she was.
I feel like what she was given, and like, this is a lot of information, but I do want to talk about the very final scene. Just, again, no spoilers, but like, essentially she's left.
Can I just jump in with one thing real quick?
Yeah.
I think all the actors were pretty good in this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, this is what shows, like, good actors can be made bad by their creative team.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Tara. Talk
anyways,
about
the little girl, right? So let's just say, at the end, there's a big shootout, because, shocking everybody, there would be a big shootout at the end of a Western.
Yep.
And essentially, she's sort of left there in the middle of the street. And like, there's like a hooker or somebody who's like, he's like, are you going to go home, little girl? And it's like, she's 12. What, you guys, no one's going to be like, there's a 12-year-old who needs some help. They're just like, all right, little girl, go home. I'm like,
good
luck.
Go home
to where?
Yeah, like, she doesn't know where the hell she is. She couldn't get home if she wanted to.
Like, is a 12-year-old going to run a general store and no one's going to try to take it from her?
Right.
Of course they are. Like she's 12.
Okay, now wait a minute. That's a movie I want to see. I want to see she's running the general store, and then, she's like, my daddy was a bad man, but now I sell jelly beans. And then someone comes along, and they're like, you can't run this store, little girl. And then she has to do like a Home Alone, but like Western style, to save her store.
Dude, Adam, you should write that. That movie sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yes, I like it. Yeah. Home Alone meets Unforgiven. That is a movie I want to see.
The movie no one knew we needed. Yep.
I don't think anybody's pitched that, Dave.
Nope.
That's what I'm going to say.
No.
Oh my!
I think Adam just pitched it.
I did.
I'm sold.
I'll buy it.
All those
I'll
agents
give you the
that
same
listen to our
amount of money
podcast, you can call me.
That they paid for that ranch, then they're like, you can't do anything to this filming location. Fine. We'll just show up with cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
What I'm going to ask you guys if you can answer why I wrote this down in my notes.
Oh,
like you don't know yourself, or is this a game we're playing?
I don't know myself.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So people in the Old West just walked around eating shit from other people. Was that like maybe everyone's a bully?
I don't know why you wrote that,
I don't.
Tara.
I'm like thinking about it, and I was like, I don't.
I mean, it's right after I'm watching someone clean jelly beans.
Well, I mean, the
So
guy
it's
did
right
try
around in
and
that area.
steal jelly beans right
Yeah,
before
he
then.
did try to.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
and
That's
the
why she's
daughter's like,
cleaning them.
he stole food from us or something.
Right, and then after that, then we see Nic Cage's wife get messed up, and there's like marshals. Oh, I remember, because Nic Cage and the daughter came back to the farm where his wife was killed, and
Yes.
all the marshals
Yes.
were in their house just eating his shit because
Oh,
they
that's
thought.
right.
Because I guess they thought, like, the wife lived by herself in the middle of nowhere, and now everything's up
Yes.
for grabs, I guess? I don't know. Like,
I
they
mean, when you're
ignored the
hungry,
fact
you're
there were
hungry.
men's clothing and children's toys lying around.
That's right. That's exactly why. Because every scene, the marshal and his deputies were eating something.
Right. They all thought they were Brad Pitt. They're like,
Yeah.
Brad Pitt eats in every scene. I'm going to be Brad Pitt.
Yeah, or they're like, there's nothing, like, there's no arc in this scene. Well, we should just eat.
Yeah. They just have Crafty there, you know, Welch's fruit snacks. And
We
you
only
know.
got 10 more minutes in the day. Yeah, but I'm hungry. Okay, well, just eat while you just do the scene. Come on, guys.
Well, you shoot.
Let's go.
Look, just have some Raisin Bran. I don't know. Did they have styrofoam back then? Sure, who cares?
Sure,
Roll camera.
There was a Starbucks cup in Game of Thrones. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. No one noticed. Oh, man.
I mean, do
feel
we rate this?
Yeah, let's just rate.
Oh,
Let's,
Definitely.
Let's rate it the old way.
So we all got to do fun accents? Is that
I
what you're
don't
saying?
know.
Yeah.
No.
So we have a 3-tiered rating system. The top tier is people must also watch. You gotta go see this movie. It's well worth your time. People could also watch. You know what? If you're in a stranger's house and you have to tell them that their significant other died and there's meatloaf on the table, grab yourself a plate and chow down and maybe watch this movie.
That's a fun idea.
And then people.
That's a fun scenario. I like that scenario.
Thank you. And people don't also watch. Is kind of says it all. Skip it. Pass. Moving along.
Move it along, little doggy.
Mosey on down.
I'll
Mosey
start.
on down.
And I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
say, move it all along, little doggy, because this movie is garbage. Don't watch it. No. Sorry.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna second that. Do not watch this film. Just hard pass. hard pass.
I absolutely agree. Do not watch this film. Boring as hell.
All right. Well, that was really, really easy.
Yeah, it was.
It was. Usually there's some sort of discrepancy. Like one of us is like, "What?" or "Come
Yeah, no.
on."
Yeah.
Nope. We're all just like, "Nope." Moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something.
Already wasted too much of my life on this.
So let's
The
talk about
answer is
something
if you want like Nic Cage is most Nic Cage, do Renfield because
Right. Or
Yes.
Unbearable
Yeah.
Weight. Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. It's also
Yeah.
a great option
also
for
that. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, there are several Nic Cage movies to choose from.
Recent Nic Cage.
Yeah.
Within the past week, 3 probably came out. All of them better than The Old Way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some stuff we actually do want to recommend to the people listening.
Oh,
Tara, Dave, do you have something that you're watching or listening to or reading that you want to promote or suggest or endorse?
I've been reading this book. I picked it up again. I was out of town last week, and I happened upon a little farmer's market, and there was a little bookseller. So I bought a book. It's called Olga Dies Dreaming, and it is very good, very compelling, and excellent. It's just an excellent, like, well-written, very accessible novel that I'm enjoying. I'm not done with it, but I'm enjoying it very much.
Nice. What's it called?
Okay, if you were a third
Olga Dies
were a-
Dreaming.
Olga Dies Dreaming. Got it.
if you were a third grader writing a book report about this, what question would you end your book report on, followed by the sentence "you'll have to read to find out"?
Oh, okay. So it's a story about this young Puerto Rican woman and her brother, who's essentially raised by their grandmother because her mom and dad go off to sort of like join sort of a rebel force to sort of get Puerto Rico like its own statehood kind of thing. And her mom really believes that like this is more important. This is the most like her sacrifice of not raising her children is worth like her journey, which of course is it, right? Like that sort of thing. And so this woman, the brother grows up and is a congressman. And so her mom's really proud, like you're trying to fight for the cause in a different way. And she grows up and she's a wedding planner. So her mom does it because her mom will still write these letters, like these very these missives of she never lets them respond, doesn't tell her where she is, but she'll write them these letters about her disappointments or about her expectations for them. So,
oh my God.
You write to find out what will Olga do?
Okay.
You'll have to read to find out.
But it's really good. It's much more nuanced. I feel like we need more of these voices from authors who don't have just a white Irish, Protestant Catholic It's just this is a very different view of Brooklyn in America. And recent. We're talking about the late 2000s. This book takes place a lot in 2017, 2018, 2019, right. Very current.
Nice. Well, if Tara's going to recommend a book, I'll recommend a book.
Ooh,
Nerds! I just finished American Dirt, which is an absolutely fantastic book. Basically, it's about a woman and her son who live in Acapulco with her husband and the family, and she makes a friend with someone, turns out to be a local cartel leader, who her husband is doing a report on, who he writes the wrong thing, and her whole family, aside from her and the son, get butchered. And she has to escape to America. And she's like a middle-class woman, and they have to go on the migrant trail to get to America. And it just follows them along that trail and the people they meet along the way. And, it's interesting because I was listening to it. I wasn't actually reading it. And the woman who read it was fantastic. She was great. But she had such a soothing tone that every once in a while I'd be like, oh, yeah, the migrant journey. It's a pleasant experience. And then she'd be like, and then the rape. And I'm like, oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, God. But at the end of it, it's a really good book. I can't recommend it enough. It's called American Dirt.
Yeah.
I feel like if I was gonna write Adam's biography, it would be called American Dirt.
It could be called a lot worse things than that.
I'm just saying. That's what I thought it was. I thought it was thinking, a term of endearment.
If I were to write a story about Adam, it would be called Cake. It's what's for dinner.
And breakfast and lunch.
Yes, exactly. And all the snacks in between.
Yeah.
I've got a twofer, and I apologize for this. The first one is out of hatred. I watched Peacock's Based on a True Story, starring Kaylee Cuoco and a bunch of other people.
Oh, yeah.
It was so annoyingly bad it made no sense. Essentially, a couple who are floundering financially discovers that the plumber they've hired is also a serial killer, and so they decide to make a podcast of the serial killer, about the serial killer, from the serial killer's point of view, and it's the hijinks they get into after making that decision, and it is absolute garbage.
Great.
But on the other hand, I was so angry. I was complaining through the whole thing.
Is it a TV show or a movie?
It's a TV show, 8 episodes. Each episode's about 30 minutes.
Got it.
And I kind of had high hopes. I liked the cast. Anyway, something that I'm also reading.
Look at us reading.
Batman Beyond, The White Knight. It's a comic book that just came out. It's an alternate reality story about Batman in the far future when he has kind of an Iron Man suit known as Batman Beyond. And it's kind of an origin story of how Terry McGillis, the guy who is in the Batman Beyond suit, gets the suit. And basically the idea is old Batman's just released out of prison, and there is a chip in his head that projects Jack Napier, who's also known as the Joker, to him. And this projection kind of becomes his new Alfred. And it's just a fascinating Elseworld story about Batman.
Nice.
Really fun and silly.
Nice. That's good. Well, if you are listening to anything and reading something or watching something that you think we should also watch, please hit us up on the Insta. Let us know on the Twitters. Social media us to death with your recommendations. We would love to hear them.
Smother us in tweets.
Yeah. That's how I want to die.
Just covered in tweets.
Yep.
And I still haven't written an ending for this. Why do I keep not doing that?
It's a good question. That's all right, Dave. Go off script. You're awesome as off script.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah. My improv skills are just mwah.
I think, thanks for listening.
It's a good start.
Oh, there you go. Thanks for listening.
There you go.
Let me write that down.
Why? He did it with a quill, everyone. I don't know why he did it with a quill.
I don't know that one either.
Quill and ink pot.
Well, thanks for listening to People Also Watched. Remember, we're 3 Hollywood insiders clinging to the bottom rung of this career ladder. But until then, we're going to keep on watching. Ooh.
Keep on watching? Is that what you're excited about?
Keep on watching.
Or did you poop?
Yeah.
Did you poop or did you? Okay, all right. Just keep on watching. Right.
Compelling.
I also pooped a little bit.
There it is. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, well, that's definitely an out. That's a definitely an out.